Hello, respective viewers. I'm George from Ireland. So in this video, I'm going to ask, is the Queen dying? Queen of where, you may wish to know. Well, I'm speaking about the Queen of the United Kingdom. That's Elizabeth II. She's the head of the Commonwealth. So she's also the same person who's Queen of Jamaica and Queen of Australia, Queen of Canada, and so on. So she's visibly aged. I know everybody ages, but has really deteriorated in the last few months. She's 95 years old. Of course, her husband, Prince Philip, he was called to his reward in April earlier this year. And when one spouse expires, often the other one follows not long behind, especially if the relationship is very close. She married him when she was 21. She had some sort of relationship with him since she was 13. And how old was he? He was 5 years older than her. Anyway, so that would have been a heavy psychological blow, seeing her husband pass away. Now, the Queen's mother, who was known as the Queen Mother, lived to 101, and people speak as though it's inevitable that Her Britannic Majesty shall also survive until the age of 101, which is a very unsafe assumption. She could die tonight. I know she's going to have the best medical care there is. Certainly, she's got a very healthy diet, and the royal family are all slim because of it. I mean, Tony Blair was always slender, said when he went to Balmoral, he observed that the Windsors ate very meagerly, despite having fantastic chefs and absolutely delectable and Lucullan feasts served up. But despite that very tempting provender, they eat sparingly because they don't want to be obese, they don't want to be ridiculed for that. Well, Prince Andrew is possibly an exception to that. Anyway, she's been seen using a walking stick at public engagements for the first time. She was in hospital lately. She was forced to cancel a visit to Northern Ireland not so long ago. So these are all very worrying signs that she's increasingly frail. So the Queen is in her dotage. She's not quite a dote, and I think mentally unimpaired, having to increasingly delegate her duties to her daughter, Princess Anne, to her sons, Prince Charles and Prince Edward, not to Prince Andrew. They would, the thrice cursed Prince Andrew, I'm sure they would like to erase his name because he's such a disgrace to the House of Windsor. So when she went to a recent event, I think it was at Westminster Abbey, she didn't go to her usual door. She went to another door because it's making it easier for her to get to her seat. So she's very frail and doddering, has difficulty walking and so on. So she's trying to save her strength for events when her presence is absolutely necessary, perhaps a state opening of Parliament or something like that. She hasn't been wearing the crown at state openings of Parliament since 2016. It's been carried on a golden velvet cushion before her during this ceremony. So she's growing ever more feeble. Now, she did use a walking stick briefly in 2003 because then she had an operation to take out some torn cartilage from her right knee. Anyway, so she's been in King Edward VII's hospital in central London briefly, but she's out of there and she's in good spirits. But they're very reticent, these bulletins on her health, partly because there is medical confidentiality. They don't want to tell things to us that we don't really need to know. I mean, if she was terminally ill, they probably wouldn't tell us. But people speak as though she's immortal. I think many people will miss her when she's gone, even those who don't especially value her now. What will happen when she does die? Well, the London Bridge plan will go into action. Depends if she dies in the wee hours or she dies in the business hours. If she dies at 3 o'clock in the morning, they won't necessarily announce it straight away. Remember when Prince Philip died, they didn't announce it till about noon, and he died several hours earlier. He'd gone back home from hospital, I think probably realising that his time was very short. His life couldn't be much long extended, and he didn't want to spend his last few days in hospital. So with the same fortitude, she may meet her death. Anyway, so there'll be an announcement. They'll be wearing black ties on the BBC. I think it'll be sent to all British embassies and so on. The public will be told. I think they'll probably cancel usual programming on most channels like the BBC. Anything festive, probably theatres and cinemas may well close that night. I was a bit shocked that Disneyland Japan didn't close when the Emperor Hirohito died in 1989. So anyway, they'll have to arrange the funeral, and that will take place about 10 days later, enough time for heads of state to arrive. a fairly long period of mourning. I would think sports matches will probably go ahead. I remember Princess Diana died. They did until after the funeral. It was a Saturday, and so we did have them because that marked the end of the mourning period. I remember that day very well. So I remember we had this a big Eldertonian Association meeting. I was a schoolboy. It was the 100th anniversary of the Eldertonian Association, and they decided to go ahead with their event the very next day. It was after the funeral. So there'll be a lying in state in Westminster Hall. That's part of the Houses of Parliament for people to file past. I filed past the coffin of the last Empress of India, the Queen Mother, as in the mother of the current Queen, in 2002. But there'll be a great wish for people to do that. Obviously, she'll be unbound and preserved because she could be distending in there, and in a sealed coffin, that's not too bad. It will be a closed casket. We shall not be able to gaze upon her cadaver. And there'll be bouquets of flowers. Guard will be mounted. They have to close it for about an hour in the middle of the night to allow cleaners to clean the room a little bit. There'll be soldiers at all four corners of the catafalque with heads dipped, obviously a black armband on the left upper arm, and then some state funeral, presumably at Westminster, not at Westminster Abbey, maybe St Paul's because it's a bigger one, and eventually by car, possibly train to Windsor, and to be interred beside Prince Philip under St George's Chapel, Windsor. So, I mean, the Queen, honestly, how much longer can she live? 122 is the longest time anyone in the world has lived. So, her death could be imminent. But whether imminent, I don't mean this evening, but within months. Is she going to be alive in 10 years' time? Almost certainly not. Is she going to be alive in 5 years' time? Probably not. Will she be alive in a year's time? Maybe. So, but if she were to die within a month, it wouldn't particularly surprise me. So that is the Queen. We can tell that she's not absolutely on death's door because she is a little bit in public, but she's had to scale back her commitments. I know she's very active for someone of her age. And they say having some purpose, having a loving family, friends, all this actually keeps people alive longer, keeps them mentally agile, keeps them physically active, having a zealous religious faith, if you think the Almighty is looking after you, but also it's a reason to socialise, and it boosts people's morale. So much of it about is the will to live and actually accomplishing something every day, getting out and not being socially isolated. And so she's an elderly person who's definitely not isolated, who has people around her to get her to do things. So I wonder whether coronavirus got to her as well. So anyway, and there'll be the proclamation from St James's Palace. That's the official residence of the British royal family, not Buckingham Palace, contrary to the popular misconception, saying that whereas as it hath pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary, of happy and glorious memory, and so the crown doth rightfully and pass to the high and mighty Prince Charles Louis Philip Arthur George, and so forth. Should be the new King Charles, be proclaimed there, proclaimed at Merket Cross in Edinburgh, proclaimed on the steps of the Royal Exchange, possibly other places. So anyway, is the Queen dying? Not exactly. Goodbye.